All right, everybody. So welcome. Good morning. This is the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee. And first, let me say Happy International Women's Day. Today, we have quite an agenda. It's going to be a very busy session for us. I will upfront say that I have a hard stop at 11:30, so I think that should give us enough time to get through all of our items. This morning, we're going to start with a review of Bill 6-21, Finance Revenue Estimating Group established. Then we will move on to our first CIP item, our county radio replacement and related equipment for $1,434,000 adjustment in the FY21 CIP. Our third item is Capital Improvements Programs Fibernet. Fourth item is Capital Improvements Program Ultra Montgomery. And item number 5 is a preliminary review of the county's cable strategic plan. And our very last item would be a review of a supplemental appropriation to the county's government FY21 capital budget and amendment to the FY21 to 26 capital improvements program for $92,000 for council office building renovation to accommodate an 11-member council in 2022. I want to take this moment to thank all of our guests for taking the time out of their very busy schedules to meet with us here today and for all the work that they put into all of these particular items. I think it's very appropriate that we are going to be discussing many items related to our county's broadband infrastructure. If this past year has taught us anything, is the true value of high-speed broadband access, particularly for those households which have traditionally not had the same level of access as our more affluent areas. So with that, let me segue into the discussion of our first item, which is Bill 6-21, Finance Revenue Estimating Group established, which would provide a needed addition to our county's fiscal planning infrastructure. This too is particularly a relevant item, as once we start seeing more people vaccinated, more activities shift to a post-pandemic setting, we will be entering a period of economic uncertainty not seen since 2008. While we can debate the underlying causes of the cycle of once-in-a-lifetime economic crises for days, we need to take prudent action now in order to safeguard our county's financing and our AAA bond rating. With that, let me see if my colleagues have any opening comments, starting with the bill sponsor, Councilmember Friedson.
Well, thank you so much, and happy International Women's Day to you too, and honored to be able to serve with you in particular on International Women's Day as somebody who's been a real pioneer at the county in so many different ways. So thank you for that. And on this bill, thank you for your support and your leadership here. Your co-sponsorship along with Councilmember Katz is really a team effort in a lot of different ways. This committee had been talking about a more consensus approach and a better forecasting model prior to the pandemic. But as you noted, the pandemic, like with so many other things, has added an additional level of importance due to the uncertainty and due to all of the challenges that we are going to face fiscally and economically as we navigate our way through it. I see this as really a way to formalize and institutionalize significant efforts that have already taken place in many ways between the executive branch and the legislative branch. There have been significant improvements to proactive communication and collaboration over several years. That this bill is not, forcing that. It's building upon that. I also want to really thank Mr. Covey, Ms. Bryant, the Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Madalino, who have all been very collaborative and supportive of this effort. I think all of us want to work together in a collaborative way to get to the best outcome possible. And then our council staff, particularly Mr. Smith, who's really been tremendously helpful here, as well as Mr. Drummer. I will say we're going to go through a number of amendments today. We had very productive conversations with the executive branch to work through some minor details on this. I think there's consensus on the consensus, and so I'm hopeful that we can talk through them explain them and make decisions based upon them. But this is consensus, in terms of the bill, and there's consensus in terms of how to get there. And I really appreciate everybody's work and on it.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Katz, do you have any opening comments?
No, very, very quickly. I just wanted to thank you, Madam Chair, and I too want to say how pleased we are that we're working together for Happy International Women's Day with you, as well as Councilman Friedson. I mean, he failed to mention me the last time, but I can get a smile from him every now and then. And I did like the term a consensus on the consensus, because that's what we will be dealing with on this topic and many, many others going forward, not just in this committee, but in other work as we do it. So I thank everyone for all their hard work, and I sincerely believe we will get through this, and hopefully within those 2 hours we can accomplish much. Thank you very much. And I always enjoy teasing Councilmember Friedson. Anyway, thanks.
I know, it just brightens up our day, all that funny teasing. All right, Mr. Drummer, if you can walk us through the packet, and then what we'll do is pause on those particular decision points so that we can discuss it and then vote. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Drummer. I think you're muted, Mr. Drummer.
Good morning. I'll start again, assuming you can't lip read. It's a good way to start the week with a bill in front of the GO committee, sponsored or co-sponsored by all the members of the GO committee. This bill is essentially, as Councilmember Friedson said, is an attempt to have the council and other members and the executive branch work together to come up with revenue estimates, which, as we all know, are crucial to preparing the budget. Revenue estimating is not an exact science. There's a lot of estimating that's necessary to do it. And the more people that are involved in doing it, probably the hope is you get a better solution or a better result. This bill would require a revenue estimating group made up of all staff members from the Department of Finance, the Office of Management and Budget, the Council Central staff, the Office of Legislative Oversight, and the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, to work together to come up with estimates and quarterly reports. We did get some suggested amendments from the executive branch, and those are the issues that I'll go through today. The first one is, should the finance director be the chair of the group? Right now, it's the representative or from the Chief Administrative Officer's office. The Chief Administrative Officer would pick the chair of the group, or it could be the Chief Administrative Officer. That's a policy decision. The finance, Mr. Coview's argument, or at least his suggestion, wasn't really an argument, was that the finance does most of this work now, and that it's going to be staffed by finance. But as we'll see in the second issue, he also pointed out that finance really only estimates tax revenue. This bill would require this estimating group to do an estimate of all the tax revenue plus any other revenue that we receive, including state and federal grant money, which is generally done by other members, including the Office of Management and Budget. So thinking of that it may make sense to have the Chief Administrative Officer pick the chair, because the CAO is the only person besides the executive who has authority over both finance and budget, as well as the other departments, like I guess intergovernmental relations would be possibly involved in helping produce an estimate for state grants and maybe federal grants too. But that's a policy issue. You can choose, and I'll stop here, if you want to have it be the director of finance, or if you'd rather have it, keep it as a representative of the CAO. That's the first issue.
All right, thank you. Okay, I'll turn to my Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, just very briefly, I don't think this is a particularly significant issue. The goal of the drafting of the legislation was to provide, a level of discretion to the chief administrative officer and the executive branch on who would be running the meetings. The expectation was it would be the director of finance, since the primary functions of this group are finance roles. I think it might be helpful to turn over to director of finance, because I think the views might have been slightly different after we addressed some of the other concerns, including the staffing amendment, which we'll be taking up in a couple items from here, which I think addresses some of it. But I don't think the primary function of this group is not changed by whether we dictate director of finance as the chair of the group, or whether we allow the chief administrative officer to choose largely between the director of finance and the director of Office of Management and Budget, most likely. So, I think it's really up to what everybody is comfortable with, and I don't think, I think it's in many ways it's likely a distinction without much of a difference, if any at all.
I agree. I'm not sure if I see Mr. Covey on my screen. Mr. Covey, are you here? Don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see him. I don't know if someone else is here from finance.
Is there anyone else? I mean, my take is that, if the executive is making this request, it seems like perhaps this is what they have identified as the most effective way to go about it. I don't necessarily have an issue with that. I don't know if Councilmember Katz, if you have any comments on that, or should we just say that without objection, we would accept the amendment?
It is certainly without objection from me. I think the fact that Mr. Covio is not here, he should be named chair, because isn't that the way it normally works?
That is the way it works.
You're named the chair.
I believe that's the rule of nonprofits. That
yeah, I believe so. Yes.
He or she who is not present shall be named with responsibilities of the group.
I think we're all in agreement on that, so that should be by consensus as well. Thanks.
I think that happened to me one time with the PTA at White Oak Middle School, so I agree with you with that. All right. Great.
We call that being voluntold.
The
next
issue is the executive suggested that in Mr. Covey's testimony that the revenue estimates be limited to tax revenue alone, because that's what they do. That's what finance does. But it's not what the executive branch does to produce the budget. They have to look at state and federal grant money as well, and any other money that might be coming in that I can't think of exactly where it's coming from. Well, permit fees is something, and other fees, and that we may have, even library books overdue. I guess we stopped that. We get the library overdue books. So that's one alternative, is to limit it to tax revenue, which would knock out lines 15 through 18 of the bill. A second alternative, though, that we had discussed with the finance director after his testimony was that if some of these estimates are being done by the Office of Management and Budget, that maybe we need to increase the staff. Right now the bill says on lines 42 to 43 that the director of the Department of Finance must provide staff support. That maybe what we need to do is add the director of the Department of Finance and the director of the Office of Management and Budget must provide staff support for the group, because OMB is responsible for collecting all the information on other fees and grants in order to produce the budget. So to require OMB to provide staff support as well as finance would allow us to keep everything in there, all the revenues, which is really important to keep track of all the revenues.
Thank you. And As you were talking, I did get a text from Mr. Covey. Apparently, he did not receive an invite for this
Uh-oh.
session. So
Apologize. That
I
must.
asked my staff to send him the link because
Okay.
this is obviously very important. But whoever has the link, if they can quickly send it, that would be great. Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, thank you for this. This was really important. As I mentioned, we had a really productive conversation with Finance and OMB together, along with Mr. Drummer, Mr. Smith, and my team and me. And this was one of the key areas of agreement that we came up with. That the concern, understandably, was that some of the revenues are outside of the scope of finance. Finance estimates tax revenues, but not state and federal grants, among some other revenues like permitting revenues. But we can't have revenue estimates. We can't write a budget in the absence of all the information for what makes up the budget. And so by adding in the staff support from OMB, it doesn't create an expectation that finance would be doing something outside of their core competency or taking on responsibilities that they don't currently have. The purpose of this bill isn't to create new jobs. It's to make sure that we're doing our job better and more collaboratively. And that addresses it. So the compromise to add the language that includes OMB, the director of OMB providing staff along with the director of finance. That's lines 42 to 43 as proposed in the packet. That addressed everybody's concerns. Ms. Bryant and OMB were comfortable with that. Mr. Covey, I know he's going to be joining, but I can confidently say that he was comfortable with that. That addressed the concerns that were raised. And, I think everybody, again, is on the same page. This was what I meant when I said the consensus on the consensus that we had found. So I would hope that we can agree to that compromise amended language.
Thank you. Mr. Covey has joined us. That makes sense to me. I'm glad that conversation was had and that this, came out to be an agreement for everybody. And I think this does enhance and strengthens this particular endeavor. So let's see, without objection, we'll accept this amendment. Thank you.
The third issue that was brought up by Mr. Covey in his testimony at the public hearing was that the group should be limited in size. Right now, it's just staff members from those offices that I listed earlier, and it doesn't talk about how many people. In meeting with Mr. Covey after his testimony, it seemed like he's now here, and I apologize for forgetting to send him the invite. That 3 of the 5 offices are from the executive branch, and central staff and OLO are not likely to send a significant number of people, probably 1 each, probably at most, that it's really under the control of the executive branch. I mean, I agree that a group that's too large is hard to work with, but I don't think that's going to happen. And I think Mr. Covey felt a little more comfortable after our discussion with him on that. But he's here and he can tell you if he wants. If you want to limit it, that's certainly an amendment we can do. But the question is people are coming from both the legislative and the executive branch, so you'd have to delineate the number of people coming from each side because they don't have control over the other.
Okay. Councilmember Friedson, since you're the sponsor, what are your thoughts on this particular item?
I think we addressed the concerns in the conversation. There were some understandable concerns about the group being unruly, but I think as we fleshed out what the group would be responsible for, and we make another amendment later to not have it be too open-ended, to be strictly focused on the quarterly revenues. My understanding was that addressed the concerns. I think we don't want to be too restrictive to not allow for any flexibility, but I think if turning to Mr. Covey here and just make sure that I understand his concerns being addressed. lines 33 and 34, which is an amendment we take up in item number 5, I think was a understandable concern, which we'll get to later, which I think helps to address this. But I yield to Mr. Covey if that's okay with you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Mr. Covey.
Yes, sorry, we didn't get an invite to this morning. When I logged on, I had no audio, so I had to get out and come back on. And I don't know if you realize this, but the live stuff on TV has a little delay, so I'm not exactly sure where you are. Are you on number 3?
Yeah, we're on
Yes.
3 in the size of the group.
Yeah, we just didn't want it to be unwieldy. I heard part of what Mr. Friedson said. I think after a discussion late last week, we're not too worried about that now.
In that case, Madam Chair, I'd be comfortable keeping it as is if that's the will of the committee.
Seems that without objection, we will keep it as is. Thank you so much.
The fourth issue is, Mr. Covey, you pointed out in his testimony that the group is required to provide an estimate, but it doesn't require the executive to use the group's revenue forecast as a basis for the executive's recommended operating budget submitted to the council on March 15th. I guess in one sense, I think so what else is he going to use? But on the other hand, it's not a bad suggestion. If you want to put in a sentence like that after line 44, it's on page 3 of the packet, just to say the executive must use the group's revenue forecast as a basis for the executive's recommended operating budget submitted to the council each March 15th. That's fine too.
All right. Any thoughts from my colleagues? Does that cover that area? All right. Mr. Covey, I think your hand is up.
Thank you. Sorry about that. This was actually more sort of just a note. We were assuming that that council would want these revenue estimates to be used by the executive. It just didn't expressly say that. I honestly don't think it matters whether we amend this or not. That's what's going to happen anyway.
Well, I think it does clarify things, and looking towards the future, I think it's important to have some clarity there as well. Councilmember Friedson, you also raised.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's great. It was a great suggestion. I'm happy to put it in. I do agree with Mr. Covey that it was understood but not delineated. So this is the belts and suspenders dynamic. We also talked quite a bit, just for reference for colleagues, on the timing of this. The timing was done, intentionally, working with staff to figure out when will be most impactful for the process. There are some challenges, as we are all well too aware of when the state distributions come in reference to our budget and the county executive's requirement on March 15th to submit his budget. The dynamic here and really one of the main components of this bill and this group will be that when the distribution comes, which is around this time, basically within the last week, the end of February distribution, which is the last major distribution before the budget comes out just 2 weeks later, it will allow for an adjustment to be made based on existing consensus revenues that everybody understands on both sides of the street, and then adapt that to the latest distribution number, which could be up or it could be down based off of that, so that we're going into that, which can be a significant curveball to the budget process that we've all experienced. Madam Chair, you've experienced more than anybody else, and some more significant than others, particularly with the FY11 recommended budget. This will help with that process because there'll be a baseline of understanding of where the initial estimates are coming from, and then layering this on top, and the group will already be set to address it. So just wanted to note that was part of the conversation. There's no decision point there, all agreement, but I think it's an important aspect of this that recognizes why this group will help to improve our process moving forward.
All right, great. So I think that we would like to include that. Thank you.
So we want to go with that amendment on number 4, right?
That's correct.
Yes. Okay. Great. All right. Number 5. Mr. Covey also pointed out a question more in his testimony about the bill requiring the group to perform any studies requested by the executive or the council president. And although I guess it's implied in almost every county employee's job that they'll perform any studies requested by the executive or the council president, it may not be necessary to put that in the bill because their primary job is to provide revenue estimates. And if you want studies done, that would be probably studies relating to finance. It would be something that you would direct the director of finance to do on finance on their own. If it's something about budget, they OMB would do it. So the question then is whether you want to take that out of the duties. If you want to take performing studies out of the duties, lines 33 to 34 would just be taken out of the bill. And again, that's a policy decision. I understand the point Mr. Covey is making, that this group isn't a staff group that would do studies, on forecasting or anything else, that would be something directed to a specific department.
All right, let me turn to Councilor Murphyton and then Mr. Covey.
Yeah, I'll just be really brief here. This was an issue that came up. The idea was, other duties as assigned is an understood job description of everybody in county government, as noted by Mr. Drummer. That's really what this was put in there. There was an understandable concern that, this group is really intended to be very focused on what it does, which is to come up with the best, most accurate, most consensus-based revenue estimates on a quarterly basis as possible, given the importance that has to the functioning of the county and our budget process, which is arguably the most important thing that we do. So I, at the request of the executive branch and Mr. Covey, as the sponsor, am in agreement that we should just delete these to not lose the focus of this group. It was not intended to be a research arm. It was intended to be a revenue estimating group. While there may be opportunities to, do analyses moving forward with members of the group, that's not the group's purpose. That's not the group's function. That's not the intention of the bill. And so I am supportive of deleting lines 33 and 34 to make sure that everybody is in full agreement of what the intention and focus of this group ought to be.
Great, thank you. Mr. Covey, do you still want to speak, or are you okay with?
Mr. Friedson and Mr. Drummer said everything. Thank you, though.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Yes, and I'm in agreement with that as well. My concern when I first read this is what happens if somebody comes on March the 14th and says, you got to do another study. Well, they're not going to have time to do the studies. So, and who's performing the studies? Do you hire some outside consultant to do it? I believe it should be removed, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, we always, struggle with this issue of how specific do you want to get in terms of the bill itself, the legislation. Obviously, it's important to be descriptive, but not so rigid and not so totally specific that you end up with unintended consequences. I think that that to me is reflected in this particular one. And so I would support removing it. I think without objection. Mr. Drummer, that's what we will do.
Okay, so that's all the issues that I have in the packet. I don't know if anybody else has any other suggested amendments or discussion points.
Should we make sure that Mr. Covey knows that he was appointed chair in absentia?
No. We'll surprise him later. No, just kidding.
Don't tell him. Don't tell him.
Don't tell him.
I was listening. I just wasn't.
He was throwing things at his television screen.
Exactly.
He was listening and rolling his eyes all at the same time.
I will say normally it's voluntold, but in this case, Mr. Covey volunteered. So I just want to make that very clear.
That's a very important distinction. All right, so let's see. Then, Councilmember Friesen, would you like to move the bill as amended?
Yes, please. I'd like to move as amended.
Second.
There's a second, and I think without objection, we will adopt this bill as amended. All
Thank you.
right, and then it goes to full council. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Okay, let me pull up my notes so I know what we're doing. We are now moving on to item 2, and this is our county radio replacement and related equipment for an adjustment in the FY21 CIP for $1,434,000. We do have Mr. Torregas that will walk us through this particular item, and I want to welcome Ms. Roper, who's the Chief Information Officer for the Department of Technology Services, and I believe that also Ms. Felicia Hyatt is here from the Office of Management and Budget. Welcome, everybody, and Dr. Torregas, I'm going to turn it over to you so we can get right into the discussion.
Thank you, and happy Women's Day as well from the staff. This item should be a very short item for you. It is a change to the current CIP, the fiscal year 21 CIP element, and it is to add a few radios, about 114, I think, radios to the system. As you remember, the GEO committee and then ultimately the full council has been very supportive of an upgrade to our radio system so it can interoperate better with each other, but also with surrounding counties. That has started some years back, and this is basically one of the last steps to make sure that every single agency has the right radios. So, it went to public hearing and there were no comments, so the decision is yours to adopt this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Roper, anything that you would like to add? All right. There you are, Ms. Roper.
No, there's nothing. I think Dr. Torregas has captured.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, any comments or questions? This is obviously an item that we have discussed quite a bit. I think it's a really positive endeavor and one that obviously it's been priority, not only for this committee, for the council and the executive. And to me, this adjustment, is obviously a very important one as we continue to move forward and make progress. I don't see anybody raising their hand. So without objection, should we say that we accept this particular adjustment? Thank you very much. Okay.
Great. I'm going to move on to item 3, which is the Fibernet Capital Improvements Program. Fibernet is very well known to you all. You've been supporting it for many years. It started more than 20 years ago as an investment of the county to make sure that we have strong broadband to all the governmental offices and departments. It's primarily funded by the cable plan. The total investment so far is almost $90 million. And this year, as last year as well, the request is for $5.7 million for Fibernet. I'd like Ms. Roper and perhaps others on her staff to make sure that they can describe the current situation with Fibernet. There's Fibernet 1, Fibernet 2, and now Fibernet 3. So the committee should be aware of the improvements that have been made over the last 12 months to Fibernet as a structure. And again, a reminder that it provides broadband services physically with actual fiber, chunks of fiber to governmental buildings, schools, firehouses, police stations, transportation depots, and other governmental entities. So if I could, I'd like to ask, of course, perhaps you might want to ask some questions, but perhaps Ms. Roper can give you an overview of the current standing of Fibernet. I think that'd be useful.
Absolutely.
Certainly. Good morning. So the first thing I would say is that Fibernet is our highway, our communications highway to all of our governmental facilities. From a strategy standpoint, we are now trying to expand that to address some of the community needs that we have for digital equity for underserved communities. A pilot project of that is the Main Street project, where we were able to utilize Fibernet infrastructure to bring affordable Wi-Fi to the Main Street project. That was a proof of concept, and we are moving towards actually dealing and addressing the accessibility and affordability needs for Wi-Fi. This shift really is expanding the use of this extremely valuable asset to the community. We are making certain that we are addressing areas in the county where communities are underserved, and we have a plan to push the same kind of service to low-income housing, and be able to provide internet access, affordable internet access to both students, families, and of course teachers in the county. So basically, the upgrade to Fibernet 3 will be completed by the end of this year, and December of 2021. I know that's a timeline that was being carefully considered by the council when I came on board. The other thing is that the request for Fibernet 2 includes the outer edge equipment. It's kind of the engine of Fibernet as it relates to our facilities. And I don't have a lot of history there, but I do know that there is a 7 to 10 year lifespan on that equipment, and it hasn't been upgraded in a very long time. So in order for it all to work together, it's kind of, you got to take care of the major engine of the car so that it all, starts when you turn the key. So that request there is to finally upgrade that equipment. The one thing I have to say about Fibernet 3 and the Fibernet infrastructure in general is that it would cost us, I think we haven't done a formal cost benefit analysis, but if we were to rip all of this out and do things differently, which no one has any thoughts of doing that, if we went to the private sector, I believe that it would cost us a lot more. There are a lot of municipal organizations that are very envious of this infrastructure. So now it's time to shore it up so that it can begin to provide not only the service to our facilities, the schools, public safety, but also to the community, and take advantage of this asset, this wonderful asset that we have.
Yeah, thank you so much for those comments. I couldn't agree more. I think especially as, for so many years, we would talk about this particular asset and how important it was to strengthen this and to expand access, thinking that obviously the future looked the way it looked. We were projecting what perhaps we were going to be facing in the short-term, mid-term, and long-term future, except that future just accelerated itself with the pandemic. Here we are. Completely dependent with no particular time to even think about what that transition would look like. We just had to do it. And so more than ever, all of these kinds of investments, and as you said, maintenance as well, is just so critical, because I can only imagine that we're going to have to be, in this particular pattern of just responding and strengthening and investing even more. So I appreciate those comments.
Just one more comment in regard to the funding source. So as you know, the funding source in prior years has come from cable funding, franchise funding, and going forward, we've seen about a $1.1 million decrease in revenues to support this infrastructure. So that is, I don't think that's going away, but I do think that it is an investment, like you mentioned, Mrs. Navarro, that needs to continue. and that we'll see great value in it as we move forward with enhancing the value of the infrastructure.
That's absolutely true. And it's another item that we have discussed in years past, is the dependence of the funding, tying that to the cable fund and the sort of future of cable as we know it. So there are a lot, I think, of issues that we definitely will need to continue to explore as time goes on to understand the impacts. Very quickly, just to explain to the public. So the request from the executive was something like $5,772,000 with an FY22 appropriation request of $3,592,000. Just talk a little bit about how that will be reconciled, just so that folks understand the difference, why there is that difference in terms of amounts.
And I can probably give some context to this while my friend Ms. Roper and Felicia Hyatt from OMB are thinking about it as well, because it's on my packet. It's routine that sometimes the expenditures for a particular given year are not the same as the appropriation request. So the executive is promising that they will spend $5.7 million, but they only request an appropriation of $3.5 million. That's the difference. And of course, the cable fund is being asked to provide $5.6 million of revenues, and then $5.772 million for that appropriation. So it appears that the difference is money that has already been appropriated but not expended. And that's the question that you're raising, and I see Mary Beck has joined us as well, who might want to comment.
All right, Ms. Beck. You're muted, Ms. Beck. Oh, Ms. Beck, you're muted. Can't hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Costas is correct. There's sufficient appropriation requested to fund the planned expenditures.
Okay. Any comments from my colleagues? Questions, Councilor Richardson?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm comfortable with the item itself. I did just want to bring up, related to this, last year we spoke a bit, and I had raised the question of the E-rates and possibility of MCPS, looking at federal reimbursement that are available for MCPS. I know that in addition to the other million things that you were looking into and working on at a challenging time, this was one of them. I just wanted to see if Ms. Roper, if you had a chance to address that issue and look into it, and whether or not there was any information related to that.
Yes, we did have the opportunity to meet with the school system to talk about those matters, and we did not find that they were ready to move in that direction. I think that part of that is we had that preliminary conversation, and that I think we're going to have to prove out, to be honest, to prove out Fibernet 3 and talk about some of the considerations that they need in terms of their connectivity and the potential for the kinds of redundancy that they need in order to operate. So I can say we did have that one preliminary conversation on that topic.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I just would hope, I know that there are some bureaucratic concerns here. Generally, one county agency does not, pay another county agency for a service. And I know that that has long been an issue and a concern beyond just the technological issues that you've raised. But in this case, it's not county money, it's federal money. And I think we're leaving millions of dollars of federal money on the table based on bureaucratic silos potentially, and that I don't think should be acceptable to any of us. So we've got to find a way to address this in a better way. This is not just on you. This is on the broader issue. But I'd be happy to work with you. I know this committee would be happy to work for you. We have a chair who's a former school board member who knows her way around the school system and some of those challenges. But we've got to do a better job of working together to get the best outcome for residents. And I just hope that we can push forward. It's even more, just like before, we started this conversation before the pandemic, but it's taken a new life because there are billions and billions of dollars in the rescue plan that was just passed specifically for this program. And that means that there are millions and millions of dollars available for Montgomery County to take advantage of. And I would hate for us to miss out on the opportunity to strengthen our technological infrastructure to support students and residents who are facing digital challenges at a time when we're increasingly relying on going digital now, and I think we'll continue into the future because we couldn't work these issues out. So I am more urgently raising this issue now. I know there's a lot of conversations that need to happen. Again, this is not a criticism of you in any form or fashion. I know we're working on it, but if there's anything that we can do to help bolster your argument with the school system of why working together and partnering together would work in order to take advantage of these funds and have the county government and the school system working more collaboratively on these issues, I hope that we can support you in that.
We would appreciate your support and feel the same way. So I think there'll be further discussions going forward.
And if I can, Ms. Navarro, you notice that I've made two recommendations to request, and one of them is that the ITPCC work program explicitly on Fibernet be reported back to you. Given the pandemic or the priorities, the ITPCC has been a bit dormant. And I think this might be a good time to fire it up and to begin to respond in a positive way to what Mr. Friedson is raising in a collaborative manner amongst the CIOs and eventually the principals of ITPCC, which is an organization that I know you support very much.
I was going to say that it seems to me that this would be the perfect opportunity for ITPCC to continue their amazing work. And you're absolutely right. Because of the pandemic, I imagine, because we've been working around the clock to mitigate some real impacts, we haven't heard much. But this, I think, Councilmember Friedson, this fits right there. And as you mentioned, in terms of the federal funds that will be coming to our localities, this, I think, would be a very, very important topic. And the group should be meeting like immediately to figure out how they can iron out these issues of collaboration and also how to best position each entity to see how they can take advantage of these funds and strengthen that particular infrastructure. We have used E-rate in the past, but no doubt, as we were saying, this is a moment that we need to meet. And so, yes, Dr. Torregas, I think that as chair, if you could please follow up and let's make sure that they come together and then also come and let us know how they plan to move forward with this or many and other items that are very much present and are very much urgent. So once again, I think we're fortunate that we have a vehicle to address these things right away, that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's there, and they've done great work in the past as well. All right, so any other issues or comments? Dr. Torregas, anything else that we need to? Okay, so with that, let's see, colleagues, anybody wants to make a motion? And
move.
Second.
okay, so with that, I think without objection, we will dispose of this item, and because we believe that it is very critical and important, and so we will adopt that recommendation. Excellent. All right, Dr. Torregas, you're on a roll. You have the next item too.
We now move to packet number 4 on Ultra Montgomery, which is project 341700. This one is a continuation at the same level as last year. There was no particular new information provided in the executive's transmission, except for the line item that says we want to use $680,000 again this year. Here, I'm suggesting that you take a pause and request that the executive refocus this effort, Ultra Montgomery, on the underprivileged and the affordability and availability of, in general, broadband services, not just fiber itself. The committee had some difficult discussions last year when you approved the $680,000 for the CIP element and then the corresponding operating budget component as well. And this year, given the fact that the executive didn't even provide some kind of a description of what they plan to do with a significant amount of money at a time of economic stress, I'm suggesting that you ask the executive to refocus it on affordability and availability of broadband to our communities, and that this detail be provided before the full council acts on your recommendation. My suggestion is I have no issue with the $680,000 item, but it needs to be refocused and focused even. And I see Ms. Roper's nodding as well. So that's my recommendation to you.
Yes, Ms. Roper.
So I would agree wholeheartly with that. And we are shifting, we are looking at a strategy to shift Ultra Montgomery to be more focused on affordability and accessibility. And really what I mean by that is affordability for those underserved communities and accessibilities for those communities in the ag reserve that do not have opportunities for providers for internet access. So what we're doing there is shifting Ultra Montgomery and finding strategies for students, teachers, and families. I think it's imperative that we move in that direction. I know that the conversations I've had with the county executive, that he is in agreement with that. And we're excited about having a very detailed strategic direction for Ultra Montgomery that will meet those needs.
I appreciate that. I think that, Dr. Regas, if there is a way to providing some language as we adopt this and bring it to the full council, that would be important. I would just add that, of course, our racial equity and social justice law basically is undergirding a lot of this work. And therefore, I think it's also useful to always include language that kind of focuses our attention because, as you mentioned, we do have issues with our underserved communities. We do have issues with our agricultural reserve. We do have issues also with our seniors in the county, and those have come to really, become more and more front and center with this experience with the pandemic. So the more that we can focus our efforts and then memorialize that with language, I think the better we will be. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you. I am in absolute agreement. I appreciate Dr. Torregas, Ms. Roper, and yourself, Madam Chair, for bringing this to the forefront. We have had these discussions over time. We need to absolutely have a plan on how we're going to focus this. So I'm in absolute agreement.
Great.
Agreed.
Councilmember Feetson. Wonderful. All right. So need a motion to adopt the $680,000, and also Dr. Torregas will work to develop some language that can be included that, really describes the spirit of what we all have agreed here in terms of how it should be prioritized. Is there a motion in a second?
So move.
Second.
All right. So with that objection, we will adopt this and we'll include that language as well. So we can bring it to the body. Thank you.
And I'll work with OMB and the Department of Technology Services to make sure that the language is developed, pass it through the committee to make sure that it reflects your desire, and then include it in the full council discussion and decision. You've done all the hard work. Now it's a conversation discussion. There are no decisions to be made for the committee item number 5. Every year, You receive a preliminary cable plan. It's asked for in the budget resolution. Last year, you agreed with the executive branch's suggestion that we do not discuss monetary issues about the cable plan. OMB felt that this time of the year, we would not have enough information about revenues. It conflicted a bit with the executive's desire to present a full plan for the financial elements of the cable plan, which is about 24, 25, $26 million in that range. So you agreed to receive simply a briefing on the strategies that the cable plan would support. And I'm glad to invite Ms. Melissa Pace, who chairs the group that puts together the strategic plan. And Melissa, what I'm prepared to do is share my screen and show 6 quick slides. You received the full document on January 14th, actually a day in advance of the deadline, but the group has created a short presentation for you. Ms. Navarro, is that acceptable as a way forward?
That is acceptable, and I also want to welcome all the other partners that are present with us today. Really appreciate all the real hard work that they have also engaged in terms of pivoting within this pandemic to ensure that our residents continue to be informed and supported. And in many ways, we have relied on them even more because communication has been key, and how to disseminate that has been real key. So I do want to applaud and thank them in advance as well. Well, with that, Ms. Space, we are here to listen to your presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I appreciate you having us. I like that you use the word pivot. That's basically what we think, that all of the members of the Connect Montgomery Alliance really pivoted on a dime. Within a week of getting the word that we were going to be shutting down, we had town hall meetings, we had, Zoom sessions. We converted everything that we needed to do from 200 person, people attending a town hall to, in some cases, 1,600 people attending. So thank you for the opportunity to share this and on any of the issues. I want to respect everyone's time, but we do have lots and lots of data to share if you have questions on any of the things we're going to cover. So this first slide here, thank you, Dr. Tregas, addresses the effort that the Connect Montgomery Alliance partners did to stand up a Corona Montgomery channel. So in the early days, a lot of information was coming from different sources, the state, the CDC, the county, MCPS, et cetera. So we created coronamontgomery.info as a website, and we created a cable channel. So Channel 10 went to promoting 100%, 24 hours a day, anything related to Corona Montgomery, Corona-related information. So whether it was council work sessions or board meetings that MCPS was holding, or municipal programs, or the college. We had programs coming from lots of different sources, all aggregated on Channel 10. So for folks who like to get their news from cable, they had that resource. But for folks that didn't subscribe to cable, we had the exact same programming streaming on the companion web channel. So we launched that within weeks on April 17th. And we've been running it full time ever since. It's branded. It has a news ticker. All the partners contribute to updating the information on the website. And in the short time from April to June, FY20, we were able to put together, aggregate and curate 304 hours of content, which was basically 630 videos. 99 of those were in one of 7 additional languages. So I was really proud that we were able to do that. And we did spend money promoting it too. So it wasn't just that we were pushing information out there. We ran ad campaigns to let the public know that this existed, either the web component or the cable component. And we feel pretty good about how we were able to serve various communities. And if there's no questions, Dr. Tregas, perhaps you can advance to the next slide.
All right.
While he's doing that, I could just say that we submitted the Corona Montgomery effort to a a case award. That's a higher ed award, and it received a gold District 2 award. And the judges said, "What an excellent use of a public resource." So I was really extra proud of that. Thanks, Dr. Trigus. So on this slide, we're just trying to reiterate what I was mentioning. There were opportunities now during COVID that we pioneered, through Zoom, working with DTS or our various IT departments. And I get the feeling and the feedback that we won't be going back. The ability to participate from safely at home for people of all abilities. Now they can attend meetings and engage in county government or in the runnings of the school system, the college, the public access municipalities without leaving their home. And we're happy to continue to support that. And in this example, the 1,600 participants, that was just one town hall. As we've gone through the pandemic, we've been trying to capture all the various elements of what all of us are doing. And it's a lot of data, but it's an overwhelming amount of reach and access and increased participation that have been provided during this time. So we don't expect some of that to go away. We'd like to, continue providing that support to our county residents. Dr. Trigus, the next slide, please. Thank you. So we really heard, message a couple of years back that we were too much in the cable space. So we don't want to abandon cable. Obviously, during the pandemic, we saw many people who, are in that digital gap relying on television, but we certainly really increased dramatically the amount of content we've been putting out on our devices in various languages with graphic content, visual on the screen, so that all the people are scrolling through their feed, they can see what's, what little keywords are there and stop and listen and then click and hear the entire soundbite from the council meeting or the whatever guest speaker or interview. So that's something that has helped us propel our engagement much higher. And we're switching from tracking number of videos or number of posts, not just to the reach of those, but now to the engagement. How are we teeing up a conversation for residents to have with either the county government or the schools or the college or each other on what it is that is happening in the county and how they can have their voices. I feel very confident and proud about how that has moved forward. And as part of that, worked with an advertising agency. We started with them early on before COVID, doing some branding campaigns and letting the community know that our Connect Montgomery Alliance, our website and our Facebook and Twitter, that they exist and our channels exist. But once we got into the summer, we decided we wanted to shift our focus to topic-based messaging, and that's where we've really seen tremendous growth. And so, for example, we did a campaign about food resources and how to access food resources in the county if you needed food or if you wanted to provide food, drop off and give food. And the indexing on how those social media posts performed were tremendous, much, much, much higher than what the best practices sort of basic line that you would get. In fact, the Spanish ones really overperformed. They had 7 and 10% click-throughs, where you're usually happy with 1 and 2% click-throughs. So we felt like we were really filling a void of information, and we're continuing to work on those foreign language outreach videos and social media posts in addition to the English. And Dr. Trigus, if you would mind advancing one more slide. So the campaigns that I mentioned that covered a wide range of key initiatives that are important to the county executive, the council, certainly Montgomery College Board of Trustees, and obviously our other partners in municipalities, school system, our public access partner. So we covered things from how to vote by mail, vote safely, celebrate holidays safely, shop small, shop local, pedestrian safety, so many of the same initiatives that we know are very important to you, we went ahead and put money behind these social media posts so that they would be seen. And you may or may not be aware that if you just push something out there organically, you might get a little traction, but when you throw a little bit of money behind it, it can really explode. And so that's what we've done this year. And it took us a little while to get into that groove, but now we're having monthly content meetings, monthly meetings with our ad agency to assist us with the very particular targeting of these messages within county zip codes, within demographic targets, whether it's lower income or seniors, whatever the message is. We are very narrowly targeting it within the county so that we know the messages are going to the right people. So if you yourself haven't seen some of these messages for food resources, it's probably because your profile on Twitter or Facebook does not meet the described needs. So we're very, very hyper focused on targeting these messages. And those are just some of the reasons why the food drop-offs at MCPS were so overwhelmingly successful. Over 12 million meals served at 80 locations. The college always gave out all of the food that we had. And so we know there was a need, and my CMA partners and MC, we stepped up and filled it. So we now know what would happen if we didn't exist, that there would be a big void in this messaging to our most needy and underserved residents. Okay, next slide, please. And in part of, not just food resources and social justice issues, but certainly the racial equity and digital equity issues are very much forefront in our minds. Before Corona came along, all of the PEG partners, our CMA partners, we were very involved with the racial dialogues that were happening. But then as Corona hit, it became even more evident that there was this disparity between the folks of different races and then white folks. And so we've been really looking at how the PEGs can draw attention to this issue, provide a means for the community to engage about this issue. And it was really much more about the racial and the social issues until more recently, where we've started getting behind the specific digital equity issue. So some of the things that we've decided to do, and we haven't been able to get this off yet, but we're going to print some one sheet type of hard card information handouts about the various digital equity resources that the county provides or the college provides or the schools provide, and try to aggregate all that information on our Connect Montgomery webpage, and then pass out it within these meal distribution bags and within the school system when they return to in-person classes, so that we know that individuals who are picking up food might also have a hard time affording internet, or they might not know how to use the computer. So we're going to try to aggregate all the information that a resident would need on our Connect Montgomery landing page and pass this card out to those who wouldn't otherwise get the message digitally, who maybe aren't on a smartphone or don't have internet. And hopefully we can let the residents know about some of the resources that the college has in training for, how to use a computer, how to use the internet. We're tapping our MCM partners so that they have already a connection with seniors and youth to create some training. So that's something we're planning right now. And our youth media partners, Passion for Learning and Gandhi Brigade, have worked with us in the past, and we've issued a task order now to engage the youth of those two or more institutions to think about how would they or how have they been helping their grandparents, their elderly neighbors, their parents use these tools. And that's what happens even in my household. My parents call their grandkids to say, okay, walk me through this app. My mom was saying, how do I order groceries online? So we know that's happening, and we want to extend that to some additional communities in Spanish as well as English that have these youth participate in creating this content and hopefully becoming advocates for their neighbors and their family members to develop these. Those are two things that we've decided to do, in addition to, of course, airing all the wonderful programming that we were getting, MCS and MC professional development faculty on, how do you teach during remote instruction? How do you use structured remote online? Initially we did so many tips, study tips, how to be successful online, how to do a Zoom presentation. So these are some of the things that we've been doing, but I'm really thinking that the next step with the messages targeting folks who don't know how to use a smartphone, or even maybe they do, but they don't know, how to do it safely, passwords and Wi-Fi and just the things that are, can boggle the mind of many of us, and certainly might be difficult challenges for some of our more senior residents who aren't digital natives. So let's see, I think we might have one more slide, Dr. Torres. And that's about our impact manager. So that's kind of an ambiguous term, but we envision a communications professional to be brought on to specifically work very closely with all the individual PEG Connect Montgomery Alliance partners to find out and develop messaging that meets those key initiatives. So the ones I mentioned so far, such as pedestrian safety and shop local, and obviously vaccine messaging. We did a lot of census messaging. As we move forward, this person will be plugged into what the council is working on, what the CE is working on, and then distribute that information back to the rest of the Connect Montgomery Alliance to see what are we already doing in this space, how can we do more, how can we maybe share the messaging or share the resources, and in addition to, if this Alliance member is doing it on social, then let's share that amongst the rest of us, or let's create a version that's right for the cable channel so that folks who are watching Corona Montgomery can also access that information. And so the impact manager, I think, will do just that. It will bring additional impact to the work that we've done this past year and elevate it to that next step. And it's going to be an interesting position because it's dynamic environment, and at any given time we're working on Women's History Month, or say her name, or any number of issues. So the person has to be nimble and be understanding of how the news cycles work and what trends are important to our social justice and racial equity initiatives, but also plan in advance. So it's going to be a good balance of kind of a news mentality, but a social media skill and an excellence in communications. So we think that will help us very much take us to the next level. And initially, we're going to, I think, try to fund this position, out of our existing operating money that we would normally get, and start out part-time. And then within the first year, we believe strongly that we'll see a lot of measures of what this person brings to this role, and then go to full-time in year 2. And that's something we certainly would love your input on. And the rest of the items that I've been mentioning so far. If you think that that's a good direction for us to go in, what you would like to see happen first, any longer term goals, we're certainly all ears.
All right, well, thank you so much. No wonder this is an effort that is garnering some, accolades and awards. As you were making your presentation, I couldn't help but think again of all of these past years when, we came together and we kept talking about, just kind of monitoring how information dissemination, communications, engagement was literally changing on a daily basis. And, how can we get ahead of this trend? How can, and it's something that so many sectors have been working on for so long. And all of you have come together, have owned this, and have come together with particular proposals and particular ideas to pivot, to start changing. And so, as I said earlier, of course, the pandemic literally said, all right, no more time to really keep practicing. It's here. What are you going to do about it? And you have really owned this in such a significant way. I mean, every element that you were describing, these elements are exactly what we have been struggling with. I have to be honest, from the beginning of the pandemic, we have all put in a bit of, a contribution to figure out how can we best get this information to our residents. And when you describe our best practices, and, I wanted to take a little moment to just reflect on this notion of how to reach our diverse communities, because I always struggle with that framing, in the sense that sometimes when we talk about that, people that don't know us might perceive this as a, sort of good thing to do, nice thing to do. But then you start looking at the numbers, right? And Wallet Hub, again, updated their, top 10 most diverse cities in the United States. Well, number 2 is Gaithersburg. Number 3 is Germantown. Number 5 is Silver Spring. And number 7 is Rockville. I mean, that's extraordinary. That 42% of our residents speak a language other than English. The Montgomery County Public Schools is about 72% of color. I mean, this is who we are. And so to have an opportunity like this, where you recognize that we are talking about life and death. And I used to say that a lot at the very beginning of this pandemic, especially for communities of color, immigrant communities, non-English speaking people, information was literally life and death. And so I am just so pleased with what I heard, and how you are already thinking about almost how to just memorialize this as a permanent feature of how Montgomery County communicates with its residents, with everyone, right? That this is not just a one-off sort of pilot or a thing that now we're just going to do because we have to, but that this needs to become the practice. And I think that, our own communications offices, the executive PIO offices and communications offices need to take a look at what you guys are doing, because we need to integrate and align all of this and have that be the way that we constantly, as a sort of normal feature, engage with our residents. It's also cool, if I'm going to use that term, because I think young people will also come into the fray, because moving into different platforms is just so critical, and hopefully this manager that you're looking at is somebody who is, young and understands all of this. And Melissa, as you were talking about, your grandparents asking your children to explain certain things, I do the same thing, right? I mean, I have a 28-year-old and a 24-year-old, and I'm constantly asking them, like, can you do IG Live through a computer? No, Mom, you need to use the phone. The platform is not ready for that. Or, things that I have no idea. But that's the beauty of it, is that young people, and I'm sure Councilor Murphyson, he is our honorary young person that we turn to, light years ahead in terms of how to utilize all these features, how to enhance engagement, how to make sure that you're also proactive in content creation, targeting the, hashtags, whatever. But that is so important, because not only are we paying attention to how to engage our seniors by providing that support, you're showing that you also understand who we are, so that, yes, it means, multicultural, multilingual strategies, but also our young people who oftentimes just don't even want to be in these particular spaces. So, I'm just very, very excited about this. And, we'll be very much looking forward to how we can strengthen this and how we can give you capacities to continue, this work, because again, it's exactly what we need, not only right now, but going forward. Things are, will continue to be in a state of flux, if you will, and this provides, I think, a really good space. Anyway, I'm so excited that I just like to, took all this time. But Councilmember Cass.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to Ms. Pace and others who have worked so very hard on this. I couldn't stop and think a little bit of the history of this as well. Over the years, historically, communication has always been of a great concern for people in government, outside government, and people who want to know what's going on. I mean, let's face facts. It hasn't been that many years ago. I think even Councilmember Friedson might remember. It hasn't been that many years ago when we did have a daily newspaper. In fact, we had more than one that was, based in Washington. All of them are based in Washington. And the local news was at one time every other week, and then it was a big deal that it went to once a week. And then, of course, we started to see the newspapers not go to any day because they've started to diminish, and it's a shame. Now we see our news online can be literally hourly or even more often than that. There was a time that television news was at 6 o'clock, and that was a big deal, and then it went to 11. Then it was a big deal that we got a 10 o'clock news, and now, of course, it's 24/7. And what we have needed to do, what we have done, is bring government to everybody's living room when it's convenient for them. And that's an extremely important thing for all of us to do. We have evolved. We need a lot more evolving to do, but that's what we've tried to do. Every person that wants to communicate, and of course, the pandemic, for all of its issues, I mean, we've had horrible, horrible issues. But one silver lining is that we did figure out how to even bring it to someone's living room even more, and how we could actually communicate in another way. Not that we necessarily wanted to do it this way, but we necessarily had to do it this way. And it was because of each of you that worked with many, many other people to get us there. So we are most appreciative. We need to make certain that you continue to have the resources. We need to make certain that during a time when cable revenues are diminishing, that we don't base it strictly on cable revenues. We base it on how we can communicate more and more. So it's been said many, many times, and I'm going to just say me too. We're here to make certain that you have the resources necessary to make certain that our public, that the public who wants to watch, or those who don't, have the opportunity to watch. So thank you very much for all that you do.
Thank you so much for saying those words.
And I failed to acknowledge that here in the packet we have the members of Connect Montgomery Alliance, County Cable Montgomery. We have Mr. Hudson, who's represents County Executive, Sonia Healy, of course, County Council, Donna Keating from the Office of Broadband Programs, from Montgomery College, Ms. Melissa Pace, who you just heard from, who's the chair, from Montgomery County Media, Ms. Nanette Hobson, from Montgomery County Public Schools, Mr. Dick Lipsky, good friend, the City of Rockville, Kathy Dantzler, City of Tacoma Park, Alvaro Calaya, and Montgomery Municipal Cable, Melissa Amold is what I see here. My eyes are failing me, but just wanted to mention you because obviously this has been such a incredible group effort, and rebranding and realigning and shifting. It's never an easy endeavor, but I think in Montgomery County we have proven that we can do this and do it quite well. All right, Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, I'll just be very briefly. I was in Boca. In the scheme of the folks that we're talking about, I'm old, so I don't know what that says about us, but I think we talk about Facebook and Twitter, and young people are talking about Snapchat and other. So it's hard to catch up. And I think we have to recognize that. And by the time we figure out what the avenue is to communicate and hire people and learn how to do it, the world has moved to the next technology, and that's a tough dynamic. And in many ways, in government or in any large institution, because private enterprises that are huge have similar issues, but we're a cruise ship and we have to be a speedboat or a series of speedboats. And that's a hard transformation to make. And when change happens, you really have three choices pretty much across the board. You can fight it, you can ignore it, or you can adapt to it. And I think too often when it comes to communication and technology, we ignore it and then we fight it because it's different. And then now it's refreshing to see that we're embracing it and we're adapting to it. And I think that's important because we're not big enough that we get to control how people communicate and how people live their lives. So we have to adjust and adapt what we do in order to reach them. And I will note the changing demographics of the county. It's the younger communities are also often foreign-born communities and immigrant communities and other communities. And so when we figure out creative ways to reach younger people, we're also figuring out creative ways to reach new people in our community who have moved here from all over the world, and figuring out how to reach them in an accessible way is central to what we do. I mean, it's the definition of the tree falling in the forest with nobody there to hear it. If we're providing services and nobody knows that they're available, they're as good as nothing. If we're doing important things and nobody is aware of what we're doing or where to go to get the support that we're trying to provide them, then we have not done much. We've given ourselves credit and put out press releases, but we haven't really done the important work of improving people's lives. And so that's why this work is so important, as colleagues have mentioned, because it really is central to the services that we provide and reaching the people who desperately need them in the community, and making sure that Montgomery County is the kind of place that we all want it to be. And it doesn't happen if we are providing services or doing really incredible work and not reaching the people who actually need to be aware of it and need to have an opportunity to access it. So this is encouraging. There's a lot more work to be done, a lot more avenues to do it, but kind of tearing down the bureaucracy and being willing to change and adapt to this new world and environment that we're in, I think is critical, and it is only going to get faster. The changes are only going to get more frequent, and so we have to not just be ready to change now, but set up systems and processes and a culture where we're always trying to get ahead of the next curve, or at least to catch up to it, which has been a challenge for governments across the board, for county government, for this government, understandably in the past. And hopefully this is part of the process for building and improving upon that for the future.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I couldn't agree more. In fact, every employee of the Montgomery Alliance, formerly known as PEG, has just tremendously grown in the past 2 years. You would say 5 years ago we were doing this, 10 years ago we were doing that. Literally 2 years ago we were completely different types of work on a daily basis than we have arrived at today. And so that's taken a lot of hard work, training, dedication, maybe even a few tears, to try to get to where we're at. And we know we have more to do and further to go, but everybody is very passionate about this work and very dedicated and very proud to live in this county that believes in this work.
Appreciate it. I'll just go by my last comment. Sorry, Madam Chair, is, so frequently we're sitting there on the county side, county council or executive branch, and we're discussing, debating, tweaking some type of statement or some type of press release. And while we're sitting there and debating the commas and the word choices and all of that, there are 1,000 tweets that have already shared the news that we thought that we were going to share. And for us to get out of our thinking that we have a full half day or a full day to determine how we're going to disseminate information, and not realize that whether we liked it or not, whether we framed it or not, the information is out there, and it's our job to make sure that it's accurate and that it's reaching the right people. We've got a lot of work to do, and we have to basically retrain ourselves, not just Connect Montgomery group, but all of us in supporting your work and in doing our own work that relates to yours. We have to retrain ourselves in terms of, how the world around us is working and realize that we're just a small piece of it. So I just wanted to note that I was thinking of a recent example of discussing information that we were going to receive as, several of us were reading the tweets and the reports that were coming out related to the information we thought we were sharing. And it's just, part and parcel of this conversation, how important it is to be accurate, to be agile, and to be quick enough to get information to folks when they actually need it.
Yeah, such an important point. I think that what we are experiencing is definitely how, information has been democratized and how people receive information and how people share information. And that is obviously a really amazing thing, or it could just be a very dangerous thing depending on who's behind the content and also the intention. And so, no doubt that these are things that we're all navigating. I am of the opinion the government needs to be, as of course, transparent and, ahead of the curve in order for us to be able to do our work. I mean, as it was mentioned before, we barely have local coverage. That is a challenge. And we also have a county that is literally a microcosm of the country and the world. And that can be a challenge, but I think an extraordinary opportunity, because if we're able to figure this out here, imagine how other jurisdictions can then, use perhaps some of the best practices. And so it is very exciting. And some comments were made about the different generations, and it's so true. The millennials and the Gen Zs, and I have both, and it's really kind of funny how already my millennial will, be in discussions with my Gen Zer, and she's like, "Oh no, we're not there anymore. We don't, and then there are all these conversations about, oh yeah, well, Clubhouse, and then I'm already hearing like, oh, Clubhouse is not as exclusive because of course the adults have come in, and it's very interesting how it's just shifting. So for us to be able to then make sure that everybody knows what's going on, we have to understand these spaces. And most importantly, bring on board, right, young people who live in these spaces and understand it, because they're the ones who are going to be able to literally culturally translate this information, if you will, if I use that term, in order to reach everyone as well. So it's super fascinating. I have a lot of these discussions, as I said, especially with my oldest, who is, who works. This is her professional in her career, this is what she does, and it's always extraordinarily enlightening when I engage in these conversations with her. So, well, I really appreciate it. I wish we, at some point, I think we're going to have to schedule a full just geo session on this, so we can have time to hear from everyone. Dr. Dorregas, I think that we should look at, a time and space for that. Because obviously we still have one more item that I want to get to, but I would love to have a bit more conversations with each of you to hear how you have pivoted in your own space, what you're doing, et cetera, and for the public to also know that all of this is happening as well. But today we're kind of tight on time, and so I think we're gonna wrap this particular item up, but also know that I very much appreciate once again the role that you have played. It has been absolutely integral during this pandemic, and I know that we can continue to improve, and residents I know are grateful to be able to have that access. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, absolutely. We're going to move on to our last item, and I will pull up my notes. And this is our sixth item. This is a supplemental appropriation to the county government's FY21 capital budget and amendment to the FY21 to 26 Capital Improvements Program. This is for $92,000 for the council office building renovation. As everybody knows, in the last election, there was a question that was posed to our voters regarding expansion of the county council. And we know that the result is that now the county council in 2022 will have 2 additional districts, which will bring the council to the size of 11 members. And this, of course, poses some logistical interesting challenges, specifically when it comes to space, because we just went through a renovation of the council building, an internal renovation. to kind of bring everything up to par, if I could say. I used to constantly talk about the message that is sent residents when they would walk into that building that was so extraordinarily outdated, and quite frankly, some of the bathrooms were quite deplorable. And so there was a renovation done. Mr. Dice laughs because it's true. And therefore, I think it was more becoming of what our residents deserve. Now, with 2 additional council members, obviously there's going to have to be some creative ways of accommodating those new council members and their staff. And so this is why we're here to approve this initial appropriation, I assume, for renovation, and to hear a little bit about what the planning would be. We do have Mr. Dice here from the Department of General Services, Mr. Assant, Mr. Gary Naldine, Fiscal and Policy Analyst, as well from OMB. And I know that also Ms. Michelson, Mr. Howard, and Mr. Rodriguez Hernandez and Mr. Mia have worked on this issue as well. So let's see, should I turn it over to Ms. Michelson here to kick it
Actually,
off?
I'll start, Chair Navarro. Ms. Michelson and
Okay.
I are trying to
Mr. Howard, there you are.
multiple meetings this morning.
Absolutely, I understand.
Yeah, indeed. So, as you noted, as soon as question C passed with the addition of 2 new council members, I think we had a meeting the next day to kind of start talking through what do we need to do. Staff feels it's very important to have everything all ready to go before new council members come on board. So I think we had a meeting that maybe that week or the next week with DGS to start brainstorming what can we do to accommodate the 2 new members and what the different options are. So today we'll have Ms. Rodriguez Hernandez and Mr. Mia walk through the packet. So in addition to the specific supplemental appropriation and amendment that you'll discuss, we also wanted to talk about some of the other things that we're doing to prepare for an 11-member council that aren't necessarily included as part of this appropriation, but we're still working on. And then also the COB renovations, as you mentioned, has been a long-term ongoing project with many different phases and pieces and components. So we want to also take a moment to give everyone an opportunity to understand where we are on different phases of that project as well. I know we're under a time constraint, so with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Rodriguez Hernandez and Mr. Mia to walk through the packet.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Chair Navarro and council members Katz and Friedson. Happy International Women's Day. I have to include that one as well. We can go ahead and get started in providing the update on the location of the new council member offices and other renovations that we have preliminarily discussed with Department of General Services. And I ask that our wonderful team over at DGS to jump in at any point in time as we review this, as well as Mr. Mia. So for the location of the new council member offices, we have tentatively and preliminarily discussed relocating the Legislative Information Services staff and utilizing their current workspace as well as the adjoining workroom and copier room and converting those into 2 new council member suites which would both have very similar, if not exact, square footage as the council member suites currently located on the 5th floor. As a result of that renovation, we would be moving the Legislative and Information Services staff to the 6th floor Patuxent Conference Room, where their workroom would also be located in that space. And due to current efforts to digitalize our files, hopefully those filing cabinets, if you remember from being in the office over a year ago, would be reduced in size, if not removed almost entirely. The 4th floor the offices would be located behind a secure door, so it would be similar to the 5th floor, and there's always the option to make it an entirely secure floor, similar to the 5th floor, which includes badge requirements and permissions to access it via elevator or stairwell. And the LIS team would use the copier in the 6th floor that's currently existing, and we would relocate the 4th floor copier to another area on the 4th floor, so those staff members have access to it there as well. And we are expecting the construction to be completed by early October 2022 at the latest. I'm sure DGS can speak more on that as well. But I did also want to note just on the funding that we have preliminary planning and design and construction dollars of totaling $500,000, with the $92,000 supplemental being reviewed today for a vote by the committee. But it's also leveraging around $408,000 in existing appropriation that currently exists in the COB renovations project that was serving as placeholder funding for the curtain wall. In the fiscal year 21 discussions with the committee and the council decided to defer a decision on the curtain wall funding. And we believe at this time that due to the new charter amendment and the upcoming arrival of the 2 new council members, that funding should be utilized for the new council member suites and any necessary renovations related to it. So I just wanted to pause there and before moving on to other areas in case any members of DGS or the committee would like to speak.
Well, the only thing I'll add, thank you, is that meeting the goal of October of next year is certainly doable. We have every confidence that will be achieved. So there should be no concerns about that.
Okay, yeah, if you'd like to proceed, I would like to also hear about just the plans for things like refurbishing, renovating the kitchen cafeteria space, just a little bit of information about whether the plan that you have put forth does accommodate, 2 additional council members with our staff. I think that's really important. And then how are you envisioning things like, reception area and things like that? Will all of that remain the same? But I do know that the cafeteria kitchen area has, been a real concern for people for a very long time. And now with an expanded council, obviously that also has an impact.
Yeah, I'm happy to start, Director Dice, unless you would like to begin.
No. Go ahead. If you want to go ahead, Nicole, and talk about that, and I'll add color commentary.
Great, thank you. Okay, so while it's not included in the specific scope of funding at this time, council staff and DGS staff do believe it's important to include or to make sure that we have enough conference room space due to the relocation of the LIS team to the 6th floor protectant room, and also address the concerns of the cafeteria and kitchen. So at DGS, when they were looking to inspect and assess the COB kitchen, they did find some code compliance issues that at a point in time would cost around $1 million to address. Council staff and DGS staff are considering different options to provide grab and go food options and drink options, as well as converting some of the current cafeteria space into additional conference room spaces, or the flexible seating that you might see maybe behind me in open design floor plans. And I'll let Director Dice speak more on that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. We did look at the cafeteria area extensively, not only for code compliance, safety, equipment, and everything else. And it quite frankly needs to be completely gutted and redone. It would not be safe nor appropriate to open it again as is. So given all of the other challenges that we have in the COB, coming up with a smaller food service operation as grab and go, as Ms. Rodriguez pointed out, is probably the best option, and affords council more meeting and conference space in anticipation of meetings and conferences becoming a thing again, and would give a lot more flexibility for that for its multi-purposes, whether it's receptions, public forums, and the like. So, and as you know, there are particular challenges on that floor and that entry in securing the building. And that's one of the other things that would have to be looked at, is how do we maintain security in the building while making that, reopening that space for public access. So all of those factors go into the cost estimations, and not really prepared at this point to come up with some details because we haven't had those plans. But we did have a couple of consultants go in and do health, structural, and code analysis, so we know what is needed at a minimum, and certainly more than anyone is in a position right now to afford. So for now, the space will remain closed until we can do something more with it.
Well, I'm going to preface my comments by saying that, of course, I will not be there post 2022. But I'm going to just say that I hope that a second sort of look at what might be possible is actually, done, some type of review. We need to remember that the council operation, once we're back there physically, most of us will spend easily, sometimes 12 hours in the building. Our meetings are back to back. Our staff, of course, is also, there the whole entire day, shifting, pivoting from meeting to meeting, meeting constituents as well. And many of our constituents also use the cafeteria. Either they're there for a 1:30 public hearing or they're in the evening. And so this is not just, again, a space where, only council members go and et cetera. It is the people's place. And so this challenge of the cafeteria has been one for quite a while, a real challenge. And I think that when we talk about also, the environment for our staff and workplace, the minimum that we need to do is to make sure that our staff and the community has a, appropriate space to get some nourishment, some food, and also a time to, if you're there for lunch for, 15, 20 minutes, maybe that's all people get, that they have a place where they can also decompress a little bit. And so I just want to push back a little bit on this notion of, grab and go and reducing the footprint, et cetera. That's a real problem. And, when you look at, conversely, the executive building, which, by the way, is not as if the executive building gets the same volume of residents coming through, because there are not, public hearings that are held there, or committee sessions, et cetera. There's a lot more public flow in the council building. When you contrast that, it's pretty startling. So I understand that there are limitations with the site, and I get all of that, but I will have to push back a bit, because I know what happens. Once you establish a grab and go concept, it will be a grab and go concept for who knows how long. So that's just my personal opinion, just as somebody that's looking out for future councils, but also for our constituents, that I believe that there should be a second look, at that, to see what other kinds of possibilities exist, and make it so that it is up to par with, what we should at least minimally expect to have for council staff, central office, but as well as our residents.
Well, if I can, before any other council members pile on me,
not a piling, Mr.
No,
I know if it was up to you, you would do something really extraordinary. So I'm just sharing my thoughts here.
I appreciate that, and that's why these are future considerations. I mean, right now it's a daunting challenge, and it will be a challenge that has to be faced. On the other hand, that is a very large space, actually, and has a lot of potential to it. And as you know, I and my team like to be creative in the way that we use space, and use it in an ingenious way, and frankly, provide opportunity for local business at the same time. So it bears more discussion. We're not prepared, or we're really not here today to discuss that in detail, but certainly will be a conversation that will involve council and council staff at the right time.
Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you all for being here. I am supportive of what you're going to be doing or need to be doing for the 2 additional offices. I think it's sensible. I do believe that you should consider, or we should consider, having the 4th floor in a secure manner, just like the 5th floor is now, that someone can get to that by using the elevator or the doors to be secure, that they need the badge to get there. As far as and I agree with the committee chair, as far as the cafeteria, I do believe we needed to make some major changes. As somebody that ate in there fairly often, in fact, quite often, I think that there was a need. I think in some ways it's been a grab and go for a while, because the grill was one area where people could, just stand there and get some food, but otherwise it was like a cafeteria type of thing. This is what either you ate this or you didn't. You had to go to the grill. So I think that there's a way to go forward. I do agree that I've always thought of the county office building before I was a county council member as the people's building. And the fact that the people's building looked as horrible as it could, I mean, the bathrooms were an absolute embarrassment. I mean, it was just wrong the way we were treating everyone, including ourselves, for this situation. But we're getting back to where we need to be. But I do think that we have to keep in mind that for getting back to the cafeteria, and I understand we're going to be needing to move on here, so I'm going to do this quickly. The county executives building is closer to the circuit court, and of course there's juries and whatnot and so there are people from the circuit court that come into the county executive building. The county office building, the county council building, is closer to the district court. You don't have juries, but you have a steady flow of people that go to those buildings. And we have to keep in mind that we need to make certain that our local Rockville Town Center restaurants, which, let's face facts, have had tremendous issues before, and especially now, we need to figure out a way to help them to help us. So I think there's a lot of competing juggling going on, but we can do it, and I think we have the opportunity. But bottom line is, I'm supportive of how what this topic is about, and that's for the 2 additional offices. Thank you.
Food trucks in the garage. I don't know. Councilmember Featon.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I think, colleagues raised important points. I do agree. It's the people's building. I think we have to think about that. And for too long, it has not been a particularly inviting place for the public to come, and more matters than just the food being offered at the cafeteria, frankly. And I appreciate some improvements that are being made in that regard. But to me, first and foremost, to have a place where the public can come and feel comfortable, that they feel is accessible, that they can attend and participate in local government is critical and should be our top priority. I do think as well that in doing the people's work, having staff that is able to serve in a way that we would expect them to do is something that we need the building to be able to provide. I echo all of those comments. Figuring out the details of how to make that happen is a lot harder, particularly with a significantly aging building with some built-in challenges. So I appreciate all the work that you, Mr. Dice, and your team at DGS are trying to do here, and our council staff who's been working, I know, closely with you and your team to figure that out. And I will echo the point about the security. We can't have a situation where certain council members have certain security on their floor and other council members don't. We have to have one standard, so hopefully we can work that out. But if we need security, then we all should have it. If we don't need it, then none of us should have it. But certainly where you end up, based on a lottery of where your office is, shouldn't change the type of office, the type of security that you have, mostly for the staff, because frankly, our staff spend a lot more time in our offices than we do. And I know all of us, when we think about security and when we think about safety, we're thinking about our staff most when it comes to that, because they're the ones who are actually there for the greatest portion of the day. So I'll just echo basically everything that's been said, and a lot needs to be worked out. There are a lot of details to figure out. We have some time to do that, but appreciate you taking our thoughts into consideration and hopefully getting to a decent place for the public, most importantly.
Absolutely.
Great. All right, so would somebody like to move this special supplemental appropriation of $92,000 for county for council office building renovations?
So move.
Second.
All right, I think that without objection, we will approve this, understanding that a lot more work will come, and we'll have more opportunities to also have discussions about that. And I want to thank everyone who has already started working on all of this very quickly. It is going to be really important.
Okay, thank
I
you.
think without objection, then we are going to adopt that, and that will conclude our 6 items today.
Madam Chair, you have 4 minutes to spare with your hard stop.
11:26.
Well,
Thank you,
I was
everybody.
even came in under budget, and Mr. Dice, Mr. Sant, you should keep that in mind, please.
I
We came
think
in
so.
under
I
budget,
think
please.
that's an omen. There you go.
There you
All
go.
right, everyone. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And for